So bang for buck PCs has always been somewhat of a passion of mine, and I decided to go out and buy either new or used the best bang for buck PC that I can currently build, and I reckon I've nailed it. So here we've got the MSI B365M Pro VDH, and we've paired that with an i3-9100F and 16 gig of RAM. Unfortunately, the RAM are different models, or different brand names rather, and that means we could not get the dual mode to function properly, so they are installed in a very strange configuration, but it works. And then this board also supports NVMe, which is fantastic. It's a nice feature to have for some fast solid state drives. At the back, we've got 1 gigabit Ethernet port, obviously, 2 USB 3s, one 3.1 USB 3, and then a USB Type-C. Everything else is quite straightforward, normal audio that you'll find on any basic motherboard. So it's a good board, nothing to really write home about, and will do the trick. Then obviously for graphics card, we need something that is powerful enough to sustain that i3-9100F, which by the way is the most underrated CPU, I think. So we went for the Gigabyte GTX 1070 8 gig. This thing is awesome. It was also bought used. It's got an awesome backplate at the back. It looks schmexy, so I'm super excited to test this out and see, is this the best bang for buck PC yet. So slapping this thing together was actually quite straightforward. We obviously just installed everything onto our state-of-the-art box for testing, installed Windows, and it was off to the races. This thing gave us absolutely no problems, booted up first time. Then if you think that the B365M is a little bit out of your reach, because it is about 50% more in price than what you can get the H310 for, there's absolutely no real reason that I can see, except for NVMe, that you shouldn't go for H310 if you really want to just save, about 50% of your motherboard price. Then I can recommend this one. It's awesome. It's a little bit less featured, but it's still a good board. Looking at our benchmarks, we first ran just obviously the normal synthetic benchmark, and we decided to go for 3D Mark Basic. And as you can see, funny enough, the CPU manages this whole benchmark quite well. You'll see GPU 1, which is the GPU that we've used. The GTX 1070 is pegged at 100% usage, and the CPU goes up and down. It does go to 50 and then 80, but almost never reaches 100%. So the GPU would be the bottleneck in that scenario. So we get 5,109 points, which is pretty damn good, I would say. Then, secondly, we've got the Assassin's Creed Odyssey, very high settings. I benchmarked everything on very high settings. So here the CPU does seem to struggle a little bit, with the GPU actually not maxing out all the time. So this would be a game where you would probably benefit from more cores in the benchmark at least. But again, if you drop the quality in your settings, you could probably bring this down, or rather bring the frame rates up to 60 instead of the 45 or so that we see currently. The CPU does turbo boost to 4 GHz in gaming basically all the time. Another test we ran was GTA 5 on Ultra, all maxed out. And again, here we see the CPU basically not really doing much. It's hovering at about 40 to 30% even sometimes, and the GPU on full load. Then Shadow of the Tomb Raider on Ultra, all maxed out. GPU is sitting at 100% usage. CPU also jumps to 100. So this is quite a demanding title. Having said that, we are pulling almost 60 frames a second, and this is everything basically maxed out. So again, you could potentially just drop some of the settings to bring your frame rates up. But yeah, we wanted to see what it can do and what it can't do. But super happy thus far. Next game we tested was World War Z. Also Ultra, 1080p. Everything was tested in 1080p. This had the Vulkan API. So it was pretty cool to try and test that. Again, GPU usage at 100% in the benchmark, and the CPU not being utilized completely. So this far it was only really Assassin's Creed and here and there Tomb Raider that used the full CPU potential. So I think that the i3-9900F is actually a very looked over CPU when it comes to gaming. The single thread performance at 4 gig is absolutely amazing for an entry level or a budget PC that can basically run everything maxed out at close to 60 frames or more. So super excited and happy about that. And then obviously we had to put Crysis on the table to see what we can get, because guess what, I can finally play this game. I finally have a PC 10 years later that can run it. So GPU at 100%, CPU still kind of chilling, running at 4 gigahertz, and yeah, reaching at like 80%, 90%. You do see about 180 frames a second in this scene, but outside and in the wild I was getting about 70 to 90 frames per second. That's an open world. So finally can play this game, super happy. Also impressed that it still keeps up with modern titles 10 years later, and I'm excited to get the remastered version to see what they've done with the graphics and stuff and how that's going to burn systems down again. So super excited about this, and I can finally play it. So a budget build obviously needs a budget, and our total spend for this was 6,400 Rand or $370. Everything was used except for the motherboard. We bought that new, and that got me thinking, maybe I can get something better for less money, and I did. I got a Z370 motherboard for 50% less than what I spent on this new B365M motherboard. So if you've liked this video, I highly suggest you click the like button and subscribe, because you do not want to miss what happens next with our new motherboard. It opens up a lot of new options. So as you can see, it adds a lot of options for us. So if you want to see what we get up to with the Z370 motherboard, it's time to hit that subscribe button. And thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next time.